Hi, I'm Ben St. Lawrence, Australian record holder at 10K, dual Olympic representative for Australia, and you're listening to the Physical Performance Show.
Failure is not an option.
I've had my ups and my downs.
I think it's an absolutely breakthrough experience.
Welcome to the Physical Performance Show, the show designed to inspire the pursuit of your physical best performance. I'm your host, Brad Beer. Listen in as we delve into how the world's top physical performers achieve their success, as well as the highs, the lows, and the journey of getting there. Let's get ready, set, let's go. Welcome to another episode of the Physical Performance Show, brought to you by Normatec Recovery and Pogo Physio. I trust you've been having a great week, and I trust that you've been enjoying pursuing your physical best performance. On today's episode, I share a conversation with you that I had with Ben St. Lawrence. Ben shares the highs, the lows, and the learnings of a remarkable career. Ben St. Lawrence's bio is impressive. He is the fastest Australian ever, that's right, ever, over 10,000 metres, having run an incredible 27:24.95 for the 10,000 metres in 2011. Ben's also a dual Olympic representative for Australia in the 10,000 metres, having represented Australia in his first outing in 2012 at the London Olympic Games, where Ben ran at the age of 30 years. Ben then went on to run in Rio for what would be his second Olympic outing. Ben has raced 2 World Cross-Country Championships, 2 World Athletics Championships, and 2 Commonwealth Games. In today's episode, Ben takes us through his origin story, growing up as a good junior, but not a super talented junior that everyone was talking about. We speak about Ben's emergence then into university years, where his running was really put on the back burner in favour of some heavy drinking and partying, which Ben touches on. It's quite a story. In 2006, Ben was watching the Melbourne Commonwealth Games, watching one of the show's previous guests, Craig Mottram, take out silver in the 5,000 metres. This was a turning point for Ben's life, where at the age of 24 years, he made a commitment that he would be on the start line at the next Commonwealth Games to be held in Delhi. And that Ben was. He was there running in the 5,000 and 10,000 metres, finishing in 7th place for both events. We talk about what it took to get from spectator to participator in the Commonwealth Games. We touch on, obviously, the Australian record, which stands to date. A phenomenal performance that one was. We talk about the ins and outs that went into that performance for Ben. Ben shares around his Olympic campaigns and how to date, in his estimation, knowing his potential, that they have been an underperforming sore point for Ben. Ben talks through the recovery required after hamstring surgery to get ready for another Olympic outing in terms of the Rio Olympic Games. We also touch on Ben and his role with the Runcrew as one of the co-founders of this great emerging running training group in Australia. There is so much gold in this episode. You're going to really take a lot out of Ben St. Lawrence's sharings, his highs, his lows, and his learnings. So let's jump right in with Ben St. Lawrence. Ben St. Lawrence, this has been something I've been looking to for a long time. I mentioned before we started recording, you have been on my wish list for a long time, not just because of your athletic prowess, as per the bio, but also because of your quite unique story. There's elements of it that I think are really, encouraging and inspiring to anyone that, learns more about you. So let's start though with something a little bit fun. And that's, what's one thing that scares Ben St. Lawrence?
Oh, mate, at the moment, it's probably getting old. I think I'm starting to feel my age and wondering, what sort of good running I've got ahead of me and whether it's all behind me. But Yeah, I guess that's one thing on the top of my mind at the moment.
So that's really profound. We're around the same ilk in years, Ben. I think you were born in 81. I was born in 80, and I've been 3 months sidelined with knee surgery, and another 3 months ahead of me. And I'm no means at your standards, but it's still something that I, even at my recreational level, trying to digest, and that's the fear of, is my best running behind me? So how do you, having gone from Australian representation to Olympic Games, still the Australian 10,000 metre record holder to this day, how do you process that? I mean, is it something that, drives you to action, or is it more something that you're just going to experiment and wait and see?
Yeah, look, I think if you'd told me, when I ran my PBs that they were going to be my career best on the track, I probably would have been really disappointed and thought, no, I can do way better. Just give me the chance, give me the time. My PBs are all quite old. Looking back on them now, I'm really proud of them, and it would be good to have gone faster. But I guess now it's just what can I achieve for the rest of my running career? What other challenges do I want to try, and how can I get the most out of what is an ageing body, and what training techniques and recovery and cross training, and how can I sort of play with those different areas to still have some great running ahead of me and not stress too much whether I run faster than I have. I think it's unlikely, not impossible, but I guess my main goal moving forward is just some consistent injury-free running. That's where I'm headed.
And Ben, previous guest, and obviously you would have had, I imagine, many conversations with Steve Monaghetti, Monners, but he shared something when we caught up around. He's on the world's longest PW streak, personal worsts, and I just thought, that as funny as that is, that's quite profound. In that, to Steve's credit, he's still out there trying to get the best out of himself and trying to reconcile what is, an aging body compared to what he knew was his career best. And I just give him so much credit for still showing up and putting his best foot forwards.
Yeah, I think probably initially it's just a matter of swallowing your pride. And I think I'm in the process of doing that at the moment. And once you do that, it then becomes about, I still love running. I'm still involved in the sport, and I'd love to get as much out of it as I can. So, hopefully and I'm not saying Steve's one of these, but hopefully I'm not one of those old guys that just talks about how good I used to be and how hard I used to train and how it used to be much tougher than it is these days. But, I'd like to be one of those guys that's still involved in the sport, still helping other people to achieve things in the sport that gave me so much, and, definitely still getting out there and running as much as I can.
And certainly, and we'll talk about Runcrew and everything that you're up to as we go on. But, Ben, let's talk about your Genesis story. This is something that, as I've learnt more about you in researching for this conversation, Ben, I'm just intrigued around. And that's, let's start with your formative junior years. I believe you ran well in the city to surf at the tender age of 8 years. So what was life like growing up, Ben? When did you first put a pair of running shoes on, and when did you realise that you had a little bit of talent?
Yeah, I definitely remember that city to surf as being one of the first sort of organised races that I was in. But so I grew up in the Blue Mountains, and I went to this primary school. It was a bit of a hippie primary school set in amongst the bush, and one of the lunchtime games we would play was called build-up tip. I don't know if you played that at all yourself, but it was basically over a few acres. We'd all be running around, and you'd start with one person in, and then when they tipped someone, both of those people would be in, and it'll go until there was, 30 kids chasing one person. And I remember there were a few occasions where I was that one person, probably 6 or 7 years old, just running through the bush, getting chased by all of my classmates, and it just felt so awesome. And I think there were a few recesses where the bell rang before anyone had caught me. So I knew I was a talented runner then, and that I loved it. And then, once I learnt what races were and how good it felt to either win, school cross-country races or little A's and travel down to the city to do things like city to surf, I think I was probably hooked from a young age. I loved the fun of it, and I loved racing. I guess as I got a bit older, I didn't love the training. I wasn't a very dedicated trainer as a young kid. I think I got away with some good results based on natural talent, playing a whole lot of different sports. I swam and I raced BMX and I rode my mountain bike everywhere, and went hiking and running through the bush on the weekends, that sort of thing. And I guess first significant track race I remember is I won a gold medal at the state little A's under 12s 1,500 metres down in Sydney, and I'd still rank that as one of my top 5 memories on the track. It was huge for me. Yeah, so I think from a young age I had experience running cross-country, road races, track. Through high school I still competed, but I wasn't one of the standout juniors. You know, I'd finish on the podium at some state cross-countries, occasionally at nationals, but, you know, I was getting flogged by the really talented kids that were training much more diligently than me. And I went to the World Schools Cross-Country Championships as a under-16 athlete in Latvia, in Riga, and I came back from that and was so motivated and just said, all right, that's it, I'm going to see how well I can go. I'm going to try and make Australian teams in the future. And I think that lasted about 5 days of running every day, and then I sort of, you know, got lazy again. So my goal was I always said to myself, when I finished high school, I was going to get serious about running and start training more diligently and, you know, look into, you know, whether there was a chance to become an elite, you know, runner and maybe make the Olympics or go to college in the US or something like that. But in the meantime, I went to university out at Bathurst and sort of got a bit caught up in the social scene out there. And that goal of getting into running when I left high school didn't really happen. That was in the year 2000, and I did compete at the Olympic trials that year for Sydney. I was trying to qualify for the World Juniors in the steeplechase, and I missed out by 10 seconds or so. And I think that was kind of when I faded away and decided to take a bit of time off running and really focus on partying to get that out of the system. And then that just sort of, I started putting on weight, and 1 year turned into 2 years, into 3, and it looked like running was never going to happen there.
Yeah, so Ben, you mentioned you weren't a dedicated trainer as a junior. I find that interesting because you knew that you had a real talent. What was it about your world that would have you say, years later in reflection, that you weren't a dedicated trainer? Did you just didn't enjoy it, or you didn't enjoy the hard work, or you're a bit more relaxed about it? What was it?
Oh, I think it was, I was just, running takes, time and you've got to run for a long time to really see the benefits of training. And I think I was more about instant gratification and also I was a bit cheeky. I knew I could get away with some pretty good results without having to be too dedicated at training. So I sort of enjoyed a bit of both worlds. But it was just a case of always wanting to, but just thinking I'll do it a little bit later and a little bit later. So I just kept putting it off, and it basically never happened at a young age. I also feel like at the time where I was up in the Blue Mountains, it was the, running scene at that level wasn't huge. So it was often a matter of me going out running on my own in the, the cold rain in the Blue Mountains, or I could go and hang out with my friends and be social. And, hanging out with friends and being social was always the more attractive option at that age. So, I think once running became, I guess once I went through puberty and had all the different hormones and got a lot of partying out of my system, it was a lot easier to be dedicated. But then there was also the social side of running and all of those opportunities that it presented, rather than just going out and running on my own.
And was there anyone, Ben, tapping you on your shoulder saying, hey, Ben, you are really gifted, do more so you can, be more? Or were you kind of left alone because you weren't one of these, as by your own, admissions there, you weren't one of these ultra talented juniors that were just winning all the national titles through high school? What was it like for you?
Yeah, I think I probably slipped through the system a little bit. I think if people had known how little training I was doing to get the results I had, maybe more people would have sort of tried to, encourage me to, join a training group or, take the sport more seriously. There were definitely people involved in my sport as a junior, trying to encourage me to do more, and my parents were always very supportive and encouraging. But I think it just got to the point where people thought maybe he doesn't want to do it. We can't force him to do it, so we'll let him fade away and do his own thing, I guess. I do remember having, in my first year at university, doing exercise physiology, one of my lecturers, we were doing some VO2 max testing and a few other things, and I hadn't mentioned that I had been a talented junior runner and jumped on the treadmill and got all hooked up. And after that, he begged me to take the sport more seriously and offered to call some universities over in the US and try and line up some scholarships and things like that. And Yeah, he was definitely somebody who really encouraged me every time I saw him, or if I had another class with him, he'd encourage me to get out running. And yeah, he nearly got me over the line. And it was a number of years later when I finally got back into it. And unfortunately, he had passed away from cancer before getting to see me become an elite level runner. So that's one regret that he never got to see me really give it a good crack.
What was that gentleman's name, Ben?
His name was Kyle Tarpenning. He was one of my best lecturers at university. He really got me interested in exercise physiology, running and coaching, that sort of thing.
And what was your VO2 max that day, if you're happy to share?
It was around 82 to 83 from memory.
Yeah, so and that was in a relatively undertrained, far from elite state of your physical conditioning, I guess.
Yeah,
absolutely exceptional. So, Ben, you're at the start of your university, you're in Bathurst. Actually, before we go there, were your parents sporty, Ben? Well, I mean, where do you think your genes come from? Any other siblings that have shown athletic abilities like yours?
Not really, no, not that we know of. My parents both ran recreationally, and that was part of the reason why I got into it when I was, in my primary school and high school years. We would go and do, races, fun runs and cross countries, that sort of thing. But no one was really a standout athlete. So we're not sure where that came from.
Well, it's had to come from somewhere in the bloodline, so you might have to go back a few generations. But and unrealised potential, right? But Ben, start of uni, if someone had to come and said to you, like Kyle did, take this seriously, you'll make multiple Australian teams, Com Games, Olympics, World Cross Country, World Championship teams. You'll hold the Australian record, years later for 10,000 metres. Would have you believed them in your heart of hearts?
Probably not, no. I mean, I knew I had potential, but maybe I didn't know I had quite that much potential. That's a tough one. I always wanted to do it. Every New Year's resolution during that time off was, all right, this is going to be the year that I'm going to get stuck into training and see how far I can go. But, things like the Australian 10K record, that really didn't seem feasible even right up until a year before I broke it. It was just sort of those first years just chipping away, getting a bit better. And, I probably would have laughed at them if someone had told me, all of those achievements.
Yeah, and I mean, we'll go through that record as we go, but that was set as a qualifier for the London Olympic Games, your first Olympic Games team, and I think we're going to pull that apart. But at the start of uni, Ben, you're studying exercise science, you're getting in the social scene, drinking, clubbing, all that sort of stuff that goes on with that transition in life, I find, out of high school into those early independent years. But you got fair way into it, didn't you? I've heard you share a story about waking up with an esky on your head on someone's yard.
Yeah, I think I was a little bit all or nothing. So, and then I ended up applying that to running, thankfully. But yeah, with the social scene, it was, if there was something happening, I could not be there. I had to be there, even if it was a Monday night, a Tuesday night, a Wednesday night. And then if I was there and it wasn't actually all that much fun, rather than go home, we'd just say, all right, what do we need to do to get this thing going? And we'd, commit and party really hard. And then you start to get a reputation for doing that, and you start to attract other people that are interested in that. And I guess it's a bit like a snowball. It starts to gather momentum. And by the second or third year, it's ridiculous that you can get the amount of status that you do for being just a really hard partier. But, you start to gain a lot of popularity and you get invited to everything. And, it becomes, like I go back to instant gratification. It's a Saturday and, might think, oh, should I go to the gym, go for a run, get to bed early so I can go for a run tomorrow, or should I go to this party and absolutely, have possibly the greatest night of my life? So looking back at it now, it's, they'll never be close to the greatest nights of my life. But at the time, you just think, let's do this. And, I think it becomes that social scene and the people you hang around, and it's really hard to break out of it once you're in that routine.
And you said you had to be there. You felt like you had to be there. What was driving that? Why did you feel like you had to be there?
Oh, I think it's, just FOMO, fear of missing out. If I was at home and, you just don't know what you might be missing out on. So I had to be there. I think we went for maybe an entire year, a couple of mates and I, without missing one single bar or club night that was on in Bathurst. So that's Monday nights, Tuesday nights, Wednesday nights, Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday. I think there were some nights off on Sundays, but probably some afternoon drinking on Sundays. And I think that I got away with it for a couple of years. I was still, relatively healthy and, didn't put on too much weight or anything like that, could bounce back and keep partying night after night. But after a few years of it and, starting to really take its toll, I think that's when I hit rock bottom. I know you can't really hit rock bottom a few times, but I think I had a few moments where I just thought, all right, now I've absolutely got to change. And it took a few goes to actually make it stick. But it got to the point where I was no longer healthy. I probably wasn't even enjoying myself that much. It's just that I was in that system and it was very hard to get back out of it.
Can you let us in on one of those moments, what it was like when you hit rock bottom? What was the world like for you at that point and what was happening?
Well, there was the esky morning where I woke up and I'd, had cut up knuckles and a mouthful of dirt and gravel and knew that I'd just been a piece of shit the night before to a lot of friends, and there'd been some fights and that sort of thing, and just absolutely hungover at the end of a bender and waking up in a house, not sure where I am, and just that feeling of absolute guilt and not knowing exactly what's gone down, but that you've done something wrong the night before. And just a moment of thinking, what is this? What have I become? And then there were a few times I remember sort of, you'd be walking home after a night out, the sun's coming up already, and you'd see people out running, and I'd look at them and just look how happy they looked and how content they looked and healthy, and here am I dragging myself home from either a nightclub or, a day club that's sort of kicking off going into the daylight hours, and just feeling like absolute shit and thinking that should be me out there running. And
well, I mean, Ben, the Australian, the newspaper, national paper, in 2011, penned something that I thought was a very, very well written. It started the article. It was 2011. He's the fastest Australian runner in history over 10,000 metres. But until 5 years ago, Ben St. Lawrence was more sinner than saint. So, it's a bit of play on words, obviously. But obviously that wasn't where you wanted to be. Conditioning physically, what was your physical condition like compared to your current, say, sort of condition now, weight-wise and things like that?
I've often said I was 20 kilos heavier, and that's just an estimate. I wasn't weighing myself at the time. I remember seeing 85 at some point on the scales. I'm not sure whether that was the heaviest I got or just one point when I might have jumped on the scales. And I have raced my best around sort of 63 to 66 kilos. So, 20 kilos heavier. And I carried most of that like with a few extra chins and swollen face and, just the unhealthy look you get from excessive drinking and partying. I think I almost probably had chronic fatigue or something by the end of it. I was just to the point where I had no motivation to have any physical activity whatsoever. And I did start just getting on the bike and doing a bit of riding. I tried walking places. I do remember thinking back to, I remember when I was a runner, I used to do hill reps. I'll go and do some hill reps and see how that goes. And I was on the ground throwing up and had a migraine for hours for the rest of that day after maybe doing 3 or 4 hill reps. So it wasn't pretty. So initially it was just, I'd go for 10-minute runs, then 15-minute runs, and it really was just putting into practice the progressive overload principle and just allowing the body to adapt a little bit. And it was frustratingly slow. And during those initial months and even the initial year, it was, okay, I'm never going to be a good runner again, but let's at least try and get healthy. So, it took a long time even just to be able to go for a 30, 40-minute run.
And Ben, I mean, going from that state physically to just around about 5 years later, qualified for your first Olympic Games team, the London Olympics in the 10,000 metres, running to qualify a 24.95 over in the US on the first day of qualifying, which to this day in 2018 remains 7 years later as the Australian record. That is unbelievable. It's believable because it happened, but in my mind, that's just extraordinary. So if we sort of look at some of the key milestones, Ben, if we can in getting there, I believe you watched the 2006 Commonwealth Games in Melbourne and watched, the likes of Craig Mottram tearing up the track in that final that he picked up the silver in. You weren't in a physical state at that stage, but was that one of those missing out moments where you looked at it and you realised that you're probably missing out?
Yeah, definitely. And I was a lot healthier by that point. I was running, I'd say, most days of the week, so probably four days, maybe 5 on a good day, on a good week, sorry. So I sort of felt like I'd made some progress, but was possibly stalling a little bit and was just going to be happy to be a much healthier person and still having the occasional, binge weekend, that sort of thing. And yeah, I was in Victoria for work and was in Melbourne and had tickets to that 5,000 metres. And I'd been watching some of the other events at the Games, and I'd seen guys that I'd competed with at school out there wearing the green and gold, running for Australia. And part of me was thinking, what have I done where I feel like I had at least as much talent as some of these guys? They've applied themselves, they're now running for their country, and I'm sort of just a nobody, a bit hungover, sitting in the stands watching. And I remember that race with Mottram racing the Kenyans in the 5,000 metres and just being absolutely electrified. And I was there with a couple of friends of mine, and I do remember saying, I'm going to do my best to make the next Commonwealth Games. And they'd heard it so many times from me, every start of every year that I was going to get back into my running. And so they kind of laughed. And one of them, my mate Steve, who I'm living with now in Sydney, actually, he said, he kind of said, if you go to the next Commonwealth Games, mate, I'll come and watch you. It was a bit of a throwaway line, but 4 years later, I did make the Delhi Commonwealth Games and ran the 5K and the 10K there, finished 7th in both of those. And Steve was over there in the stands watching. He was true to his word, and he's been a big supporter ever since. But yeah, he'd heard it so many times that he kind of laughed it off. But yeah, that was definitely a turning point where, and I honestly think almost from that point onwards, every decision I made, I don't know what made that one so real, but every decision I made after that was pointing towards me becoming the best runner I could possibly be, whether it was, where I moved to, who I moved in with, what jobs I took, the people I socialised with. It really was a single focus from that point onwards.
And I think it's fascinating that you'd look and watch and be electrified, as you said, by Craig Mottram in that race in the 2006 Commonwealth Games, and yet fast forward a few years later and you'd be lined up to race Craig in Zatopeks here in Australia and other events and the world's best runners. And I think that's just a beautiful irony, isn't it?
Yeah, it was really funny because even during that time where I was not involved in the sport whatsoever, every now and then I'd jump on some running websites or I'd buy a running magazine and keep track of results. And so I had people like Mottram and Bernard Lagat and even, Chris Zielinski and some of those guys, and Matt Tegenkamp, who I looked up to and saw as real idols who were competing during that time where I was sort of just coming up to start getting back into running. And so, as you say, it was a pretty quick turnaround from being a bit of a fanboy to lining up next to them in races and then eventually, actually throwing down racing them, in events. And yeah, it was kind of cool to be a fan of the sport and then be able to get involved and race these guys.
Listening to Ben St. Lawrence, Australian 10,000 metre record holder, dual Olympic Games representative, and also Runcrew co-founder. Support for today's show comes from Normatec Recovery. Normatec is the leader in rapid recovery systems designed to give a competitive edge to the world's elite endurance athletes. The Normatec Pulse recovery systems are dynamic compression devices designed for recovery and rehab, using the patented Pulse technology to help athletes recover faster between workouts and after performance by reducing muscle soreness and improving circulation. Get fresh legs faster with Normatec. To find out more about Normatec's Pulse recovery systems and all their products, jump over to alphasport.com.au and don't forget to use the promo code for the Physical Performance Show podcast listeners, POGO, P-O-G-O capitals, to receive 5% off all Normatec products. Support for today's show also comes from Pogo Physio. We exist to help you get back to your physical best following injury. We want everyone who walks through the doors of Pogo Physio to cross their physio finish line. That's where we high-five you and tell you that you have finished rehabilitation and celebrate the fact that you're back to your physical best. We do this through session-to-session care, as well as some industry-first models such as our unique 2, 6 and 12-week fixed-fee, unlimited access finish line programs. These include unlimited hands-on therapies, active rehabilitation, and use of state-of-the-art equipment such as the AlterG anti-gravity treadmill. In addition to finish line programs and session-to-session care, Pogo Physio clients can also benefit from the very popular monthly wellness booster packages, where from just a low $195 a month, patients of Pogo can receive access monthly to physiotherapy, remedial massage, active rehabilitation including clinical Pilates, and access to AlterG anti-gravity treadmill running. For more information about Pogo Physio services, jump over to pogophysio.com.au and schedule your initial appointment or 1 hour Discover Recover session. And so, Ben, if we jump a few sort of chapters, there's, you mentioned the Delhi Games, your first games, which Steve came and supported you through after you said you'd be at the next games. Your performances there, 7th in the 5,000, 10,000 metres. You had World Cross Country champs in 2008, and then again, I believe in 2011, World Athletics champs in 2011 and many other achievements in that time. But I want to fast forward to the Australian record you set, 27:24. What was your conditioning like in the lead up to that? What do you think were in reverse engineering it now, the secret ingredients that catalysed that performance?
I think it was consistent, basically barely missing a day for years and years leading up to that. Slow progression up to, from 100K weeks to 120, 140, probably hovering around 140 to 160 with some maxes at 180, but really focused on 3 big sessions each week, a good long run. There were definitely specific sessions and little, races and things like that, but I really think what got me there was the years of consistent training that led up to it. In the shorter term, so I'd run 13:10 in March that year in a 5,000 in Melbourne, which was a 15-second PB, and I remember that the basic sort of formula you use is you double your 5K and you add a minute. So we looked at that and thought, if I do have potential over 10K, then maybe I could run somewhere around 27:20, which sounded ridiculous when we said it. And only a couple of years earlier, I'd been trackside in where was it? At Berkeley, when Collis broke Sean Crichton's record and ran 27:29. I remember watching that and thinking how ridiculous it was that someone could run, 2 13:45s or quicker back to back. Then 2011, I was training over in the US. We're at Mount Laguna and had done a few races in the States, and I was actually in a real form slump. I was flat and tired and training like absolute shit. Was getting almost lapped in some sessions with Bobby Curtis, an American runner who I raced at Stanford in that race. And it got to the point where my agent, Nick Badeau, his assistant coach who was over there, Gary Henry, and my coach back home, Sean Williams at the time, we were thinking, would it be better if we put Ben forward as a pacemaker for this race, or should we pull him out and focus on a race further down the track? And we said, no, let's just try resting. Let's bring the load back a little bit. I was trying to hammer big Ks, big sessions at altitude. I'd had a number of races. I was really, really lean. I was focused on being as light as possible at the time, so I probably wasn't taking in a whole lot of fuel at the time as much as I needed. So I think it was a couple of weeks out, I just started, eating a bit better, resting a bit more, got my legs back under me. And then there was one session before I left where I did some fartlek with fast float recovery. I think it was about 6 Ks of that, and I finally felt like I could run again. And then I went for an easy run just around the meadow there before we flew to San Francisco, and I just had that bounce and that pop in my legs again. I thought, wow, we might have actually timed this perfectly through a lot of preparation, planning, years of consistent hard work, but also a little bit through luck in that I just hit a terrible slump in training that forced me to rest. And I'm definitely a runner who has proven over the years that I run much better with a bit of a taper, and I can't just go out of heavy training and race and still race well. I need a bit of a rest. So I got to Stanford at Palo Alto there. Bobby Curtis and I and Eloise and Nick and a few others travelled there, and went and did some strides on the track the night before, and it's just such a good track there, beautiful conditions, no wind, and same thing, I just felt even stronger doing those strides, and I thought, you know what, tomorrow there's no point not going for that Olympic qualifier, which is 27:40. So I thought, got nothing to lose. Got out in the race and was sort of, mid to back of the pack and just ticking off the laps, 1K, 2K, 3K, still feeling all right. Wasn't hitting that point where you're already redlining it at 4K or 5K in a 10K, which is a terrible place to be. And so, every few laps I'd move up a little bit more and little bit more, and with a couple of K to go, I sort of was convinced I was going to get that Olympic qualifier. So it then became about, all right, well, let's just get involved in this race and see how I can go. So, tacked onto a few people who went around me, and Bobby, who'd been absolutely smashing me in training leading up to it as the race went on, just wasn't that much further ahead of me. And I remember talking to him afterwards when he heard people cheering for both of us. He couldn't believe that every time they'd say, "Go, Bobby, let's go, Benny." He just couldn't believe that I was still there. He was expecting me to have a terrible race like I think most of us were. Then it got down to the last couple of laps, and I remember looking at the clock thinking, wow, the Australian record might be on here. So coming into the final lap, I just went for it, and there was a Kenyan, at the time no-name Kenyan, who'd got a jump on us and put about, I think he ended up winning by 13 seconds, called Bidan Kuroki, who he was a nobody at the time, but he's gone on to, I think, place top 5 at Olympic Games and multiple representation for Kenya. He's a Japanese-based Kenyan. But the race was on for sort of the second pack, and it was Matt Tegenkamp, Bobby Curtis, Bob Tari was in there, myself. And, I think I went flying around Bobby and Matt Tegenkamp down the back straight and stretched out, and I think I ran the last lap in 57 seconds or so, and coming down the straight, it was Bobby and I neck and neck, which was a really cool moment because we're great mates, and we'd been travelling and training and racing together for a long time in the US leading up to that, and he got back past me, the bastard, so he's still got a PB quicker than mine, and I saw the time as I finished 27:24. I just couldn't believe it. It took a long time to sink in, and it was a good moment to share with Bobby. And we had a pretty subdued celebration that night. I think it was pizza and a few beers by the hotel pool. But it took a long time to sink in that I'd run the fastest 10K an Australian had ever run, and it was amazing. I thought of all the things that had gone wrong in that lead up, so I just assumed I was, I could run 27:15 and then eventually sub 27. And looking back, it's interesting that is the fastest I've ever run for 10K.
The moment of a 40-second PB, like, that's extraordinary. Even for a beginner runner, a 40-second PB is huge, and you're at the elite level as it is. It's a remarkable performance, and there was certainly no eskies on your head by the sounds of it that night. But you fast forward then, Ben, off that incredible performance to your first Olympic Games in London. You're on the start line for your heat. What's going through your head? And I believe, if my maths is anywhere near right, you're about the age of 30. So I guess, in terms of a lot of people's Olympic careers, a late comer to the Olympic experience. What's going through your head on the start line?
Yeah, it was an amazing night. It was. I remember walking out from the underground. You've gone through all of the different call rooms, and you got your bibs on. Everything's checked. You're walking under the stadium out onto the track, and it was a big night for the British. Jess Ennis was doing her victory lap at the time. She just won the heptathlon, and I was walking out, and the crowd was already going pretty wild with her victory lap, and then they started spotting Mo Farah, who was in my race, and the noise in that stadium that night was just amazing. And I've always thought of myself as someone who rises to the occasion and can use that sort of energy to get the best race out of myself. And once again, things hadn't gone perfectly in training, and thankfully I've had so many experiences where training hasn't gone perfectly and I've still run really well, that I went out there believing that I could run really well, and just towed the line, nervous obviously, but trying to focus that nervous energy to get the best out of myself, and really proud to be there. I had lots of friends and family in the stands who'd paid $1,000 a ticket to come over and watch me, just to get in the stadium. So I was really proud to be there, and just wanted to put down something that I could walk away really proud of. And in the end, the result definitely wasn't what I would like to have had. I was 20th. I can't even remember what time I ran, 28:30 odd, over a minute off my PB, but I couldn't have run any harder that night, and I couldn't have tried to prepare any better, so I had to walk away proud knowing that I'd given it everything.
And then, Ben, between London and your second Olympic outing in Rio, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong on my timelines, you had the nasty hamstring tear. That was after Rio or before Rio?
That was before Rio, yeah. So after London, I ended up having a really persistent hip injury that we couldn't quite get diagnosed, but couldn't quite get over either. And I was just constantly in pain, and it was limiting the amount of training I was able to do. And after a disappointing Olympics, I started thinking, what's happened here? Was 2011 a bit of a fluke? Am I ever going to run well again? And ended 2012 a little bit miserable, and put a few different things in place in 2013. I think 2012 I had quit my job. I'd travelled a lot more, tried to increase the training. I'd run 13:10 and 27:24 in 2011. So I thought, well, if I do more stuff and different stuff and this and that, I'll be able to run sub 13 and sub 27. And, looking back, it actually had the opposite effect. I ran slower and ended up sort of chronically injured by the end of that year. So 2013, I tried to go back to a sort of system that had worked a bit better in 2011. So I got some part-time work again. I sort of stayed based in Sydney a little bit more and put my training weeks together a bit more myself, and put more recovery in there, and really started some good strength training with a new strength coach, regular physio, and actually probably got into the best shape of my life in 2013. I ran 13:10 again, and actually won Stanford that year in 27:37. Not quite as quick, but I feel like I was in just as good shape. And things were starting to roll again. Well, 2014 was once again in really good shape back over in Mount Laguna, and hurt my Achilles that year. And I think that was sort of that set me back again. And it was just a matter of sort of injury and then rushed recovery, and then injury and rushed recovery. So 2015, I had some Achilles issues and had some time off with that, had fallen over and broken some ribs and had run through that. And I think I was just pushing too hard to try to rush to get ready for the World Championships in Beijing, and was doing a track session. It wasn't super fast, but had a bit of a sore hammy for a while, and felt it tweak a little bit on one of the reps, and then started the next one and just felt jolt of pain up the back of my leg, and stopped the session, and went and got some scans done and a bit of physio. And I had a training camp planned for, I think I was leaving either the next day or 2 days later. And I just thought, I've hurt myself before and still recovered, so I'll still go to this training camp at a hot weather training location in Thailand, and fully expected to then go on to Beijing and race at the World Championships. But while I was in Thailand, got the information from the scans and the sports doctors that I'd done a 14 centimetre tear down my semimembranosus, and that I definitely wouldn't be running, and that I should come home as soon as possible to meet with a surgeon in Melbourne to have that sewn back up. And that running fast again might not be possible, but we'll talk to this surgeon and see. And so I kind of went out and got blind drunk and picked up a bad case of the flu, and so ended up flying home to Sydney, miserable, hungover, with the flu, with a big tear in my hamstring, wondering if I'd ever run again. So that was another rock bottom, I guess. But I came back and met with this awesome surgeon in Melbourne who had done this procedure. It's quite a unique injury. You'd probably know more about how unique an injury it is, but it had happened to a few AFL players in the past, and this surgeon in Melbourne, Julian Feller, had successfully repaired a few of them. So I went down and met with him, and he looked through all my scans and talked over the procedure and what might happen, and that if it was successful, there'd be a pretty definite timeline of improvement, and that if things went well, there would still be the chance, because I had an Olympic qualifier from 2015 Stanford where I ran 27:44, I think, in that race, and had just run under the Olympic standard. So I knew that if I could get fit again, get recovered from this hamstring surgery, that I did have a qualifier on the border, that I might still be a chance of getting selected. So I had that surgery and couldn't do anything for a little while, and then could start with some heel drags, just dragging my heel back towards my body, and then could start with some walk jogs, and then it was terribly frustrating, but every day was a bit better than the last, and every week was a bit better than the one before that. And before long, I was back up to running 100k weeks and then 120k weeks, and then started feeling like I was actually getting into some really good shape. And I was doing a lot of cross-training, stuff in the pool, stuff on the bikes, gym work, Pilates. I was really as dedicated as I've ever been to maximise the time I had to get fit, and got to the point where I ran the 5K at the Olympic trials in 2016 in Sydney and came within, I think it was about a second of winning that. I ended up third behind Sam McEntee and Brett Robinson in a really deep 5K, and I think that was enough to then show the selectors that I deserved a spot in the 10K with the time I'd run from 2015. So, yeah, I was over in London when I got the call to say that I'd made my second Olympic team, and that was that was almost as good a moment as the first one, given that it wasn't that long before that I thought my career was over with a torn hamstring and surgery.
And I mean, listeners, we'll tag up a photo that Ben has on his Instagram gallery, or you can jump over and check it out yourself. The scar from the surgery, Ben, is a good 20, 25, 30 centimetres. It's huge.
Yeah, it was. It wasn't the sort of surgery they could do through a small incision. They basically had to cut right down the length of the torn section so that they could get in there and sew it back up. And it's a pretty meaty scar. I remember it was a couple of weeks after the surgery, and I think there was probably still some scar tissue in there or something. Maybe it was a bit later than that, but I'd sort of started making some good progress and making some strength gains in the gym, that sort of thing. And I stopped to help a lady carry her pram up some stairs and stumbled a little bit and felt something go in my hamstring exactly where I'd had the surgery. And I was so worried that I'd torn it again. I went and had MRIs and everything. I thought, no, I've done this again. It's all over. But it just turned out it was probably a little bit of scar tissue moving, and the scans actually showed that it was healing well and that it looked like it was improving. So, yeah, that was another good day when I got those scan results back.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ben, tendons can be so cantankerous at the best of times, whether that's post-surgery or just a tendinopathy, that to do what you did is really testament to the care you had and obviously the commitment you were showing the process as well. So your Rio campaign, Ben, just briefly, how did that one play out for you?
Look, I think I probably sound a little bit like a broken record here, but I think I genuinely think I probably could have, looking back, run somewhere from 13:10 to 13:15, 27:20 to 27:30 every year of my running career since I first did it in 2011, without injury and without all of these issues I've had. But at an international stage, being a 13:10 to 13:15 runner or a 27:20 to 27:30 runner, it's not really going to get you anywhere. So my problem, I think, arose from trying to get to being a 12:55 to 13-minute runner or a 27-minute to 27:10 runner, and in taking those risks and in pushing things further than I probably should have. You have some other issues that arise, whether it is injuries or whether it's overtraining and just over fatigue and ending up flat and running well off your best. So it probably looks like it was a terrible campaign, and that maybe I didn't work hard enough and ended up coming 28th in Rio. But I think the 28th is a reflection of trying to do everything possible, and I know a lot of other athletes go through this in really stretching yourself and really taking a risk to ever have the chance of finishing top 8 or top 5 at an Olympics, and having it backfire. And that was the first race I've ever been lapped in at an Olympics, which is nothing that anyone ever wants to go through. It's pretty demoralising. And so I look at that result and I think it was a terrible campaign, and I'm a little bit ashamed of the result, and I don't have great memories from the Rio Olympics, but at the same time it was another Olympic Games, and I'm very proud to have been there, and I got to see some of my teammates race really well, and I got to spend some time in Rio, and I take a lot of positives out of it, but from a personal standpoint it was just a really disappointing end to a year where I worked extremely hard to come back from hamstring surgery to really put something down that I could walk away from proud of. And it just didn't come together. And looking back, I hit some really good form during that year. There were some points in training that suggested I was not too far away from career best form, but then just pushing, I think I pushed a bit too hard in some areas where I maybe should have given myself some recovery weeks, and it might have been similar to 2011, just a little bit of recovery away from having one of the greatest races of my life.
Yeah, I mean, it's the art and science, and certainly with your work with Runcrew as a coach, that's what you live and breathe in your current form, isn't it? But I mean, you use the word shame, Ben. That's, I've never been in your shoes, but it's a fairly hefty sort of emotion. What sort of sits behind that? Is it that you feel like you've inherently within yourself, let yourself down, or coaching team, or where does that sort of stem from?
Yeah, and nobody has made me feel that I should feel that way. Everyone's really supportive, and to most of my mates, they wouldn't know the difference between 8th in Olympics and 28th. It's, well, did you win? Did you win a medal? No, well then, good on you for going, sort of thing. But as a runner, I know if I got things right, what I'm capable of, and I would love to just show people, all my supporters and all the people who've helped me over the years. I'd love to put something down at a major championships that would have reflected that, and I didn't. And the people who saw me working closely and saw what I was doing day to day know that I gave it everything. But yeah, you just love to walk away with something you could be really proud of. And I've definitely got some races over my career that I'm really proud of. But yeah, you sort of leaves a bit of a sour taste in your mouth. I'll just say that.
You're listening to dual Australian Olympian and 10,000 metre record holder Ben St. Lawrence share around the highs, lows and learnings of his remarkable career. If you missed last week's episode featuring Laurie Fauna, an expert edition on all things women's health.
There isn't really any research saying that posture or positions influence how well your tummy muscles and your pelvic floor muscles are working or kind of change in posture. So we don't want people to be afraid of getting into certain positions. It's just spending too long in positions that might strain your tummy muscles. When your tummy muscles have to work, the center of your body's like a balloon. So when they're working and your diaphragm's on top, so if you imagine kind of pushing on the top of a balloon and then squeezing the sides, all of that pressure can go downwards. So what you're doing with your tummy can influence pelvic floor from kind of a pressure standpoint.
To tune into the full episode 96, and explore the archives of the Physics Performance Show, be sure to jump over to pogophysio.com.au or simply peruse the library on your favourite podcast player. Now, let's jump back to Ben St. Lawrence. Ben, you mentioned at the start of the recording top 5 moments, and your, I think, junior state title, might have been the 1500 metres, was one of those. What are your other highlights performance-wise that you're most proud of? Yeah,
I think definitely winning the City to Surf in 2010 was a big one for me. It's not a huge international event, but for me personally, having run it first when I was 8 years old, and I'd come the 2 years prior to that, I'd come 4th, then 2nd, and then finally won it in 2010 by 1 second over Michael Shelley. It was that was a huge moment, and it was good being a local event. I had a lot of friends, family, training partners out there, so that was that'll definitely make the top 5. The 13:10 I ran at the Melbourne Track Classic. That was a 15-second PB that day, and took down some guys that I never should have taken or never thought I could take down on that day. So. That was a real jump and probably a moment that told me that I could, be quite a good international elite level distance runner. Beating a couple of my heroes and kicking down, thinking that I might be able to get past Bernard Legat with 200 metres to go. I think I almost got to his shoulder and then he sprinted away in the straight. But that was a really surreal moment, and one of my race results that I'll be very proud of for the rest of my life. Breaking the Aussie 10K record in Stanford. What am I up to there? Yeah,
that's your top 5, and I mean, I think that's a great juxtaposition, Ben, against what you feel has been for you personally underperformance in your Olympic campaigns to what you're capable of. So Bernard Legat, you mentioned there, previous guest of the Physics Performance Show. What did you and Bernard exchange at the end of that duel in terms of words?
I'm not sure if he pretended to know who I was or if he just felt like he should, but yeah, he I remember we were doing some press interviews afterwards with some journalists, and they said, "Oh, did you were you thinking Ben was going to be a threat coming into the race? And he looked at me, and I saw a bit of not knowing who the hell I was in his eyes, and he was like, yeah, Ben's a very strong runner. I knew he'd be a challenge, and I think he might have been making that up, but it was pretty good to be, have Bernard Legat standing next to me saying those sort of things after a race. And then we did see each other quite a lot after that around the circuit, and some European races and races like Fifth Avenue Mile. And, he was always an absolute legend. And I think he did remember me after that race. So.
That's brilliant. The professional, the consummate professional, eh? Ben, let's jump into throwing a performance round. So some rapid fire questions around training principles and paradigms and insights. So, Ben, training session most disliked. What one's that? What's that one?
3-minute hills or 800-metre hills, 6 by 800-metre hills that I've done a number of times with the Melbourne Track Club over the years. I hate it because of how hard it is. I love it because of how good it is, but it's definitely not one of my best sessions. And there's one in particular I remember doing at Mammoth Lakes into a headwind on a sandy trail about 200 metres behind Collis and Bobby on one of my worst days ever. So, 6 800-metre hills at altitude.
Yeah, we've heard about the Falls Creek sessions from some previous guests, so there's a commonality. Training session you most love, Ben?
I love fartlek with float recovery. It's so effective for anything from 1,500 runners all the way up to marathoners, and I think it has a place in every training program. And for me, I feel it was one of my magic sessions.
Any specifics on those magic sessions, Ben?
Look, it could be anything from we would do sometimes wind sprints, so 100 metres hard, 100 metres float for up to 5K. Then there's things like mono fartlek. There's quarters. There's 700 hard, 300 float. You can really do it any way you like, and it can be done on a track if you want really specific, or you can go and do it out in a horse paddock somewhere based on time. So I think it's a really great session that can be done anywhere, over hills, on flat. But the key for me is that the recovery should be a float and not backing it off too much. So you're really just coming back down and barely getting your heart rate down before you go again. And I think it's great physiologically, but also great mentally to show you that even though you're absolutely stuffed towards the end of a session and you hit that cone or you watch beeps and you have to go faster, you find that you can, and it's a really good race preparation, I think.
Favourite pre-race meal, Ben, over the years, the many performances?
Mine would be, pretty boring. Banana mashed up with some form of nut butter on either toast or rice thins with honey or some medjool dates sprinkled over the top. Yeah, light but plenty of energy.
And the night before, what might you typically take in there?
Usually a rice-based dish rather than pasta. I feel that sits better with me. A few veggies, keeping it pretty light, maybe some seafood or chicken or something. But, lots of rice.
And, Ben, bedtime, morning, rise time, evening, going to sleep, have you been disciplined over your career with that, or something that's just ebbed and flowed? Yeah, it's ebbed and flowed. I'm not much of a morning person, and I find my tendons don't love running fast early in the morning. So if it was up to me, I'd probably do my first session at 9 or 9:30 in the morning. However, I do have some early mornings, so I try to be in bed by 10 or 11 and up by, sometimes it's 5:30, but if it was up to me, sometime between 7 and 8. You mentioned that your tendons don't like running fast. Is that because they feel stiff, or
Yeah, talking about my fear being aging. If you saw me, for the first hour of every day, I do look like I'm 80 years old. So morning runs for me, or even warm-ups for sessions, they're quite slow to begin with, and it'll often be 30 to 40 to 60 minutes of pre-run routine just to get to the point where I can jog. So, early mornings aren't great for me.
Ben, the athlete you most admire, who's that and why?
I'd say Kurt Fernley for a number of reasons. Just how bloody good he is, how hard he works, how humble he is, and just the complete package, I reckon.
Toughest competitor you've ever raced, who's that and why?
I've raced some tough competitors, but Collis Birmingham would have to, be one of the guys I've raced most regularly and one of the guys I've found very hard to beat over the years.
Is there a mantra that you use, Ben, or you have used when you've been racing? Something regular self-talk that's consistently there?
Yeah, for me, it's just, it doesn't happen often, but I know how bad it feels at the end of a race when you know that you haven't given it everything. So there'll be points in races where no one else will know whether you've made the decision to push or to be tough or to, not back off, but you'll know. And so I always think at that moment in a race, I just think do the right thing, because you'll be glad you do. When you're warming down, you'll know that you gave it everything, and there's nothing worse than the feeling of not having given it everything. So, yeah, that's got me over some of the really rough patches of races in the past, just knowing that I can be satisfied with myself cooling down.
There's a great post that you put up pre your Rio campaign, fist pumping Eloise Wellens, and the caption was another comment between you two, the words of "one more in the bank." So is that something you've shared a lot once you've deposited a good training session?
Yeah, definitely. And it really is just, whether it's money in the bank or layers in the book or bricks on the wall, it really is a process. And yeah, if you're coming back from injury or something and you're starting to put those first bricks in or the first deposits in, it seems like it's never going to happen. But once you start getting some momentum up and, giving a fist bump and celebrating and getting close to an Olympics, you think back to every little deposit you put in that bank. It's a good way of looking at it, I think.
Brilliant.
To reward patience and consistent commitment.
Brilliant. Your best recovery tip, Ben?
I think nutrition and sleep are the two that work for me, and sleep's something that's not always easy to come by, but nutrition and sleep. Ice baths can help and all that other sort of stuff, but just good food and sleep, and then not jumping into hard training too soon after a really hard effort.
Yeah, so important. One word to describe your racing style, what would that be?
All out.
How would you, Ben St. Lawrence, describe being in the zone?
In the zone. Oh, that feeling where you're running over the ground rather than sort of taking steps. So you really got that flow. Your heart rate might be just a few beats shy of maximum, but for some reason you still feel in control. And it's very rare. It's that runner's high that I guess we're all chasing. But that feeling when you're really super fit, you're super lean, and you're very strong, and you're just tapping along over the ground. And I'll probably describe it as the way Bernard Lagat looks when he runs. If you feel like that, you're in the zone.
When was the last time you were in the zone?
It's been a while, actually. Man, I don't know. Be a couple of years, I reckon, since I've really been in the zone.
Yep. What's a couple of fun questions to round out the performance round, Ben? What's the funniest thing you've ever seen while out either training or racing?
So Tim Rowe was a housemate of mine and a training partner for a number of years, sort of around the 08, 09, 2010 sort of era, and we did a lot of running in Centennial Park. So you start to see some strange things in there. And we're running along the side of a trail. It was early in the morning. There was mist around, and this guy was out walking his dog, and he looked to his right and there was no one there. Looked to his left, there was no one there. We were running on a sort of grassy section, so we weren't making much noise. And when he thought there was no one looking, he picked his dog up, and from the back just above its bum all the way up to its head, he took in a really big sniff and just sniffed his dog all the way along the length of it. So it looked like he was really enjoying it a bit more than he should. Put his dog back down and then realised we were behind him and sort of quickly started walking as if he hadn't just picked his dog up and given it a big sniff from one end to the other.
Well, that's one of the best ones I've heard, Ben, so thanks for sharing.
I have no idea what he was doing.
I don't think you ever will. We probably don't want to know. What's the hardest session, Ben St. Lawrence, you've ever done in your career?
It'd have to be either that 6 by 800 metre hills at altitude into a headwind on a sandy trail. It probably wasn't that bad, but that's how I remember it. Either that, or we did do a session in San Diego in 2015, shortly before racing the 10K at Stanford. It was a Melbourne Track Club session. There was a bunch of people doing it, but I remember it was Andy Vernon, Dave McNeil and myself, and it was 6 by a mile with 30 seconds recovery, which is not long. It's about enough time to turn around and get back to the line. So 6 by a mile, and I think we had a minute off and then an 800 hard. And it was super tough. But we joked around after finishing that session that, well, if we can finish that, we can probably come top 3 at Stanford, and we almost did. I think we came first, third and fourth at Stanford that year, the 3 of us. So.
Yeah, that's impressive. Ben, you're out of the performance round. Well done. That can be your session for the day.
Thank you.
What's on your bucket list, Ben, both inside sport and outside of sport?
Look, with running, there's still a few things I'd love to tick off. I really want to explore the marathon distance and what I might be able to achieve at some longer distances on the roads, a few half marathons and marathons, and even getting into some of the trail races and potentially trail ultra marathons. There's so much to do out there in the running world, and I find it still so rewarding and a really good way to travel and see things. And yeah, from a professional point of view, I'm really excited with how Runcrew's going and how myself and Gary Howard, the other my business partner and co-coach of the group, how we're able to give back to the running community and I guess put into place a lot of the stuff that we've learnt over our careers as athletes, but also, learning to become the best coaches possible and really, sort of seeing where we can take that.
And Runcrew, Ben, it seems to be flourishing. I regularly see Runcrew singlets. It seems to be wherever I look, event-wise, event pictures, online, social media, etc. What's a typical day look like? Ben, in your role with Gary inside the Runcrew community? Yeah,
I guess it is somewhat time-consuming in that we write an individual program for every single person who joins. So, it's quite time-intensive, particularly for Gary, who's the programming master in programming. Then we have, we use Training Peaks to upload everyone's sessions, and we have multiple forms of communication for feedback. So we've got text, we've got Facebook messages, we've got emails, we've got phone calls. So there's quite a lot to do in that area. And then in terms of sessions, we have a Tuesday early morning session, Thursday early morning session, Tuesday evening session, Thursday evening session, a Wednesday afternoon session in Western Sydney. Then we have Saturday morning and Sunday morning. So, it's keeping us busy, but at the same time, and obviously a lot of events that we get around to on top of that. But it often, doesn't feel like work. It's the sort of stuff we might be doing anyway. So, It's great. We have everything from 800-metre runners all the way up to, people racing 250-kilometre races and beyond. So, it's really teaching me and allowing me to use what I've learnt through running. So I feel like I'm learning as much out of it now as I did through my own running, which is great.
And Ben, is there any one story? I mean, there'd be plenty of Runcrew stories, I'm sure, of transformation from beginning through to people's achievements being met and exceeded, expectations, I should say, being met and exceeded. Is there any one story that sort of really sticks in your mind at the moment as being a real great example of what people can achieve? Say there's listeners listening in, potentially considering a half marathon or a marathon. Any stories that you could share that would just encourage listeners? Yeah,
well, look, and it depends on what level they're at. We've had people come to us who, might have a lot of weight to lose and might barely be able to run for a few minutes, who've gone on to, through consistent hard work, knock over a 5K race, say a park run, all the way up to a 10K, and then half marathon all the way through to marathon. So I think, patience and persistence is the key, but anything's possible. There's a young bloke that we coach, Jackson Sharp, who through a friend I used to do little A's with up here in the Blue Mountains. A friend of hers was a school teacher at a local high school, and they said there was a really talented young bloke there, that he didn't have a coach and that he was, a national level sort of runner, and that he might be looking for some guidance. And so we started helping him out, and he was, a pretty strong state national level runner, and he's now the the Australian junior champion and competed for Australia at Commonwealth Youth Games. And I think I have a soft spot for him because he's from the Blue Mountains, from the same hometown as I am, and I'm trying to help to make sure that he doesn't drift away from the sport at the same time that I did. And, he's awesome. And we actually listen to your podcast occasionally on our drive home up to the Blue Mountains from a track session in Sydney on a Tuesday evening. So, Yeah.
That's fantastic. And Ben, if listeners want to find out more about running the Runcrew, I should say, on Instagram, run_crew, and where else can they find out more about what you provide and what you offer?
Yeah, so we've got Runcrew. We're on Instagram. We're also on Facebook. You can look for Runcrew on Facebook. That's where we share a lot of our stuff. We have a website, runcrew.com.au, and if anyone is interested in picking my brain or Gary's brain or asking about how we might be able to help them achieve their own running goals, our email address is info@runcrew.com.au. So it'd be exciting if we got a few new clients out of this.
No, brilliant. Well, look, listeners, we'll tag up all of these links, etc., in the show notes, so you can jump over and check out the show notes. Ben, if you could boil down everything you've learnt through the highs, the lows, your learnings of your career, what would be one bit of advice that you'd give to people listening in to perform at their physical best, if you could only give one solitary piece of advice?
Yeah, I think something along the lines of consistency is key. So you're better off getting 100 sessions at 90% of what the maximum you could possibly put out in a session would be, rather than 10 sessions at 100% followed by a week of over fatigue leading into an injury, that sort of thing. So I think most of my underperformance came from doing too much and pushing too hard and getting too stressed about whether I was hitting the splits on all of my reps and that sort of thing. Obviously, you need to train hard, but I think consistency really is a key. And if something's working, do it consistently, do more of it. Don't think that you've got to, change things and constantly increase. It's, it might just need to be more of what you're doing consistently for longer while staying healthy.
Yeah, brilliant. Ben, a couple of listener questions that have come through here. One's from Tesla Fox. I don't think that's Elon Musk, Ben, but you never know. That might be his alias. What did Ben learn most from your 2017 Berlin marathon campaign? I mean, you ran 2:24, I believe, your first marathon debut.
Yeah. Well, I learned a few things, out of that, or confirmed a few things that I already knew. You can't really shortcut a marathon preparation. I hadn't done the work needed to run a really good marathon, and that if your best shot, well, I think I went out way too hard. Obviously, I went through at 2:11:30 pace through halfway, and that was always going to be a bit of a risk. So I think for my next marathon, I definitely will, and it hasn't scared me from doing another one. It's I just need more time, a more progressive build, and more weeks of high mileage and longer sessions to really be conditioned, ready to run a marathon. And then I need to be a bit more realistic about what my current shape is and let that dictate sort of how I go out. I sort of knew I was taking a risk and that I hadn't probably prepared well enough, but at the same time I'd booked flights and I'd had a whole lot of other stuff planned around that race. And once I got there, I thought, well, if everything goes perfectly, I might put myself in contention for qualifying for the Commonwealth Games here. I've got nothing much to gain out of running a 2:15 or 2:16. So I thought, what the hell? I've surprised myself in the past. So I went for it, and that was painful.
And so, when might we see you in the next marathon? In your next marathon, I should say.
I'd like to do one towards the end of this year, provided I can get some weeks of consistent training and months of consistent training behind me. So I won't choose one yet, but I'm looking at doing a trail marathon, a 45k race in March, then another trail race here in the Blue Mountains, a 22k sort of mountain race in May, and then maybe Gold Coast half in July, and then look at a marathon, whether it's Melbourne or Berlin again later in the year, provided I've put in the work.
Fantastic. Ben Luddy asks, what's your favourite session for a 10k?
Yeah, I think we probably touched on this. I'd say fartlek with float recovery, anything from 5k up to you can get 10k of work done, and you can even get more if you want to break it up with some rest in between as well. So obviously it needs to be built up to and be part of a structured program, but I reckon if you look at all the top 10k runners over the years, they would have had some of that fast fartlek with float recovery.
Brilliant. Princess Wiggles asks, what's Ben's favourite hip glute strengthening exercise?
Ooh, there's a lot of good ones, but I find the where you put the cable around your ankle and do the hip abduction I find that really effective.
Yeah, brilliant. Ben, last question here from the listeners. If Ben had his time again, as if you could start from scratch, what would you change and why?
I wouldn't change much. I would probably put in really good strength training, 2 to 3 sessions a week from when I first began. I think I sort of overlooked that and got away without doing it for so long, but by the time I did start, a lot of damage had been done. So I think strength training should be in everyone's weekly routine. And then, just the same sort of thing that we've touched on before is just, aiming for more consistency and injury-free training years and letting that take me to another level. When I had that breakthrough year in 2011, rather than forcing it and changing a lot of things and ending up going backwards. So, just if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, wise words. Ben, finally here, mate, fun question. If Ben St. Lawrence could have dinner with 3 people, living or past, who's at your dinner table and why?
Oh, that's a tough one. Let's go Ron Clark. I'd love to chat to him, an Australian running great. I reckon Ricky Gervais would be a hell of a lot of fun. Keep me laughing. Put in Genghis Khan as well.
And what's the fascination with Genghis Khan?
I don't really have a fascination. I just think, you get someone from a long time ago and someone such an extreme character. It'd be interesting to sit down at dinner and see what he's like.
Well, that's a unique table, Ben. And, mate, finally, every guest of the Physical Performance Show issues listeners with a physical challenge for the week. So what's Ben St. Lawrence's physical challenge to listeners going to be?
So this is something I've been exploring a little of late because I am getting into some more trail running and getting off the grass and off the road and nice smooth dirt paths and getting onto the trails and trying to bring as many hills as I can into a lot of my runs. I think there's a bit of an obsession these days with Strava and worrying about what your pace is at the end of runs and what your weekly mileage is getting up to, and people are often just running on flatter surfaces because they know they can run quicker pace and get up more miles. I'd challenge people to find some big hills and run up and over them, and not to neglect those for the sake of looking better on your GPS training. So I'll be looking for vertical gain and vertical loss, so elevation in some of these Strava runs as well as pace.
So, listeners, if you take on Ben's challenge for the week, go and find some big hills and run them and tag Ben up on social. And where can we find you, Ben, yourself personally on social? We mentioned Runcrew. Where can we find you? Yeah,
so at Twitter, I'm at Benny Saint. Instagram, I'm at Benny_Saintgram. And that's it. I'm on Strava as well. So if you want to follow me, I'll give you a follow back and we can compare elevation gain.
Oh, that's brilliant. And Ben, finally, tag in an athlete. Who's someone that you would like to personally hear featured on the Physical Performance Show? Who do you want to tag?
Ooh. Well, I mentioned him before. Have you chatted to Kurt Fernley yet?
No, but he would be a dream guest. So, Kurt, if you're listening in.
All right, I'll give you an intro and see if I can help get him across the line.
Oh, that'd be brilliant. So I know he's pretty active in the lead up to the Com Games, so we're not far away.
Yeah, he'll be a busy man, but you never know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, Ben St. Lawrence, I just want to personally say thank you. You exude humility for a guy that's achieved so much, and I think that's one of the attractions to you, and certainly thanks for your transparency around some of your early formative years, and everyone's got a background, mate. Everyone's got a past, so I think that's a credit to you for sharing so openly.
Oh, no worries. Thank you.
So there you have it, another episode of the Physical Performance Show. I trust you enjoyed today's episode featuring Ben St. Lawrence. If you did, then please let both Ben and myself know. You'll find our social media handles over at pogophysio.com.au, along with a copy of today's show notes. If today was your first time tuning into the Physical Performance Show, then a mighty welcome. If it was your 97th time, then thank you for your ongoing support of the show. If you have enjoyed today's episode and know someone who would benefit or enjoy this episode, then please take a moment to share the episode and the love with them. Sharing means the world and helps this show get into the earbuds of more listeners who, just like yourself, are looking to pursue and enjoy their physical best. Don't forget to hit subscribe if you'd like to get the episodes auto-updated each and every week from your favourite podcast player. Lastly, if you've been enjoying the show, please consider leaving a review over on iTunes. It's really simple. iTunes have opened up reviews now to be able to be done from smartphones. Also, of course, your desktop computer. 1 star if you think it's okay. 5 stars if you've been really enjoying it. Reviews really do mean a lot, and I certainly appreciate them. A massive thank you this week to AT Runner. AT Runner rated the Physical Performance Show 5 stars with the headline, "Brilliant insights and so much to take away." AT Runner commented, "I have listened to about half of all the episodes now, and Brad does a consistently great job at bringing out fascinating insights into the challenges, adversities and triumphs of each and every guest. There are so many gold nuggets of insight and perspective in terms of both training and life in general. To sum up my key takeaways and themes that all of these champions seem to possess, it's a legitimate confidence born out of ultra-consistent effort, long-term planning, getting the 1%ers done, and the ability to look beyond the dark periods as purely a moment in time through a tremendously positive outlook. Every installment's been terrific. My personal favourites have been Brendan Davies, Dean Canazis, Jess Trengove, Rob De Castella, Chris McCormack and Troy Bayliss. Can't wait to get through the rest and the next installments on their way in 2018. Nice work, Brad. P.S. Potential future guests to keep in mind and track down. Chloe Esposito is a must, mastering 5 completely different sports to win Olympic gold. What a legend. AT Runner, thank you very much for taking the time to leave that review. And Chloe Esposito, if you are listening, then yes, we would love to feature your success here on the show. A big thank you to the team who make this podcast possible. Susan Wilkin on all things show administration, Matthew Walding on all things graphic design, and of course Daryl Misson, our ever amazing audio engineer who produces this show each and every week. Of course, another big thank you to show supporters Normatec Recovery for making this show possible. Podcasts are free to download, however, they are not free to produce. So thank you guys. If you're into running, you can now pick up your copy of my running and jogging bestseller, You Can Run Pain-Free, over on Audible or iBooks. You Can Run Pain-Free is available in Kindle or paperback versions from Amazon internationally or Pogo Physio online inside Australia. To say thank you for tuning in to the Physical Performance Show, you can head over to pogophysio.com.au and pick up your copy for 50% off by simply adding the promo code, one word, POD 2018. That's POD 2018, all in lowercase, one word. Coming up next week on the Physical Performance Show, I catch up with Ben Canute. We keep the endurance theme running. Ben Canute is a US Olympic triathlete, having made his Olympic debut at the 2016 Olympic Games in Rio. In 2017, Ben had a breakthrough performance in the World 70.3 Triathlon Championships, picking up a silver medal behind Javier Gomez. It's a whole lot of fun next week's episode where Ben shares the highs, the lows, and the learnings. And from there, we'll be taking it to the kickboxing ring and catching up with 11 times world Muay Thai champion Nathan Carnage Corbett. So stay tuned for next week's episode. Until then, keep pursuing your physical best performance. I'm Brad Beer, and this has been the Physical Performance Show.